Hi, welcome to the coaching game. It's time for Coaches Creating Change.
It is.
With
Wow.
Terry Yoffe.
And we are so happy to be here.
Yes, we are.
And this is our final
2018.
18, right.
She's jumping the gun here.
No, I said 18.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Show on working with the core competencies. So today, I think it would be a great start to kind of go through them, talk a little bit about each one, and then get to our 11th core competency, which is managing progress and accountability. And for me, that's kind of wrapping everything around the whole ICF core competencies.
Well, it's kind of like the whole point. It's like, okay, you know, you've gone through all the steps and you kind of know where you're headed. It's like, now how do you keep it together,
right,
and how do you
exactly,
move it forward?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when we started back in January, my gosh,
I know,
forever ago, we looked at the first set of core competencies, which was the first building block, setting the foundation, right? And that had two competencies: meeting the ethical guidelines and the professional standards, and establishing the coaching agreement.
Right. And meeting the ethical guidelines and standards, that's why Terry and I are both so pleased and proud to be a part of the International Coach Federation, because they've already set up ethical guidelines and standards that are followed not only nationally, but internationally.
Right.
And that just really gives coaches a guideline as to how they should be handling themselves and the behaviors that should take place and that shouldn't take place. Basically, what one of the things is where it's very difficult for a coach. I won't say it's difficult, but a coach has to be constantly aware that she is a coach, or he or she is a coach, as opposed to a counselor, as opposed to a mentor, as opposed to a psychiatric therapist.
Right.
Yeah. And it's so, after we've gone through the laborious training that we both went through different agency or schools.
Program, right,
Terry
school.
was CTI and I was IPEC, but it took us a long time to get where we're going. Then you know that this is what a coach does, and this is the boundary you don't want to cross, and here's what you do within the realm of coaching. So ICF has already set that up, so we don't have to be geniuses. We just have to follow the rules.
And I just want to add to that, the thing about ICF is they are always refining and what the standards are, whether they're increasing certain things. And our last episode with Magda Mook, who's the CEO of ICF, one of the things we talked about was, how can a coach be, and I loved what she said about, if you have an experience, you can talk about it. If you bring something to the table, you can talk about it. So it's not so cut and dry as to the role of the coach. And one of the things that I do is, if I want to say something outside of the coaching realm, I'll say, I'm taking my coaching hat off, and we'll talk, without that.
Right.
So that there's many ways to help and work with a client. So,
and it doesn't mean that you can't give advice or a suggestion. The way that ICF would like you to handle that is like, ask permission.
Right.
Do you mind if I make an observation? Do you mind if I make a suggestion? And then don't be attached to the answer.
Right, of course.
I mean, because if I say, Terry, you know what I think? I think you shouldn't wear gray anymore. And then she goes, no, I love gray. And then I'm going to say, no, but gray. You look gorgeous in gray, by the way. But gray is, and then I'm going to go, that's not a good color for you. Don't get attached. I mean, it's not your session. It belongs to the client.
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I do is, this morning I had a client, and, listening to him, I said, so, again, I'm just curious about something, and go into what I was curious about. And some things stuck, and some things not so much, until the end. He says, maybe blah, blah, blah.
You could have been right. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So anyway, that's basically meeting the ethical guidelines.
And actually,
what that means.
I love that you brought that up, because it's really like coaches are not question machines. I know everybody goes, oh, you have all the answers. You tell your client that. I never tell my client that. If they had all the answers, they wouldn't hire me.
Right.
So it's like, okay.
And we don't have all the answers. We don't have any answers.
We're going to dig them out together.
Right.
But it's like, you really, it's so good to make an observation, or it's so good to say, oh, you know what? Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Let me clarify. Is this what you meant?
Right.
Exactly. It makes the interchange human, as opposed to, here, I'm going to shoot you this question. Oh, okay, now here's the next question.
Right,
And
yeah.
No. So there are many ways to get there.
Exactly.
Be human. I think that would be the first rule.
Exactly.
Be human.
Exactly. And the next one is, under that heading of setting the foundation, is establishing the coaching agreement, which is really, for me, in a lot of ways, sets the foundation.
The framework, yeah.
Exactly.
Definitely. Yeah.
Of what everything else is built on.
And there's a couple of course you're going to ask the client, what do you want to work on, but you want to find out you want to get a little deeper, and you want to go, okay, well, specifically, what's the goal for this session? And then, until we had a conversation, but it's like, okay, so Terry feels that perhaps, tell them what you feel about goals.
I don't ever use goals? That word. However, I was on a webinar where Marsha Reynolds spoke. She is a fairly well-known coach.
I think ex-president, or is she the president now?
No. If she was, it was a long time ago.
Yeah. Oh,
she's
okay.
not.
Yeah,
she's written Outsmart Your Brain. She's written a few books. And what she talked about in opening up the session could be, what is your desired outcome for this session? If not that, she had a very long, what would it resolve? I've now picked up a little bit on that, but I never use the word goal. We've talked about that.
We had a whole show about that.
Right, exactly. So,
and obviously we didn't change any minds between the two of us, but it's okay.
But,
one of the questions that they ask is, they can be asked in setting up the framework is, well, what's your measure of success? What would make this a successful session? And one that I think is genius, and I wish they had come up with that when I was actually going through the training, is like, well, why is that important to you? I may think I know why it's important, but you tell me, why is this important to you? Because a lot of times the answer is amazing. And I think what you were talking about is the question that I find that people don't feel comfortable with. It's like, what do you feel? What issues do you feel need to be resolved here, or dealt with, or addressed? And it's like, and maybe the client won't know, but if the client does know, then that tells you, that's the beauty of that question. That tells you exactly what your next question should be. If you're going to ask, and I go, it's like lack of motivation. It's like, okay, well, what usually gets you motivated? Just deal with it, and that tells you how to start your whole coaching session. So ICEA, again, has got it down kind of pat, what, the framework, and it just makes so much more sense, because if you don't get your framework in the beginning and you don't know what you're dealing with, then you have to poke around with all these questions until you hit pay dirt and say, oh, okay, that's what
and I think everyone's got a different way of opening.
They should, absolutely.
Of their coaching session. And, the key is, when you come to the end, that to make sure that they've got their takeaways, that they are got what they needed in a way from the session.
Absolutely.
So, so that's the first building block.
Or that's the first, the first phase of the coaching session. Absolutely.
It's kind of setting everything up. Then we come to
Terry's favorite.
Establishing
trust and intimacy with the client.
But that goes with co-creating the relationship.
Absolutely.
So when you've got the first building block, this comes to the second one, which is, in my opinion, as important. They're all important, but it's co-creating the relationship to ensure that you will get the maximum, the optimum from working with a client for that session.
Right, and that whole trust thing is I remember this because it was like Terry was going, I think this is the most important one. Of course, as we went along, go, yeah, that's important too. But vulnerability was a part of that.
Right.
It's like you don't have to walk into a session or a situation of any kind and pretend you know everything, because you don't. And it's better if you can just go, wow, that's interesting, I'd love to check that out, or that's a good point, I don't know, let's see if we can figure it out. And that just that really lets it makes the client, or on a regular basis if you're not dealing with client, whoever you're talking to, feel like, oh, okay, well, I can have that space too, I don't have to know it all.
Right.
So that, I think vulnerability goes hand in hand with establishing trust and intimacy.
Right, absolutely. Trust and vulnerability for the client and for the coach.
Absolutely. It sets the tone for your session, because you both, it's a collaborative thing. You both are like, here, we're both going to get through this together one way or another, and we're going to help each other. So
exactly. And then the coaching presence, which is another big one, which is how does the coach show up with the client and being there, literally being present. That means clearing your head, not having all that chatter go on, and really being with the client, and always thinking, what is it that keeps this person stuck? That goes with the next one too, active listening. A smart business person, what is keeping them stuck in this particular situation for them? What
also goes with that is like to be observant and to be responsive, like you were talking about in the other one. It's just like, okay, it's like if someone says something, it's like you don't move to the next question. If it's like, I really have this big fear, you deal with it. And ICF is very strong on partnering with your client, and that simply means allowing them to choose what happens in the session. It's like, okay, so is this an issue that you want to deal with, or are we ready to make a plan? Or I hear 2 or 3 or 4 different directions in which the coaching can go.
Right.
Which one do you want to work on?
Right.
It's just a matter of you're there, but to make your presence known, that I'm here to assist you and facilitate you and get you what you want out of this session.
Right.
Just a goal. No, I'm just kidding. Could be a goal, but maybe not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever. They're all synonymous.
Yes,
so
yes. We'll have that dispute for a long time.
Yes.
So Terry started touching on active listening.
Yeah, so that's the next building block, is communicating effectively. So that's the third, and under that is active listening is the first competency. And that's really listening to the client, what they're saying, and most important, what are they not saying? What's under there that they may be struggling with, that they haven't figured out, and that's key. And it's impossible to really listen when you've got the chatter going on.
Yeah.
Oh, I have to go to the grocery store. I have to talk to so-and-so. When you have that machine,
it's a constant
talking, there is no way that you can be really listening on a very deep level to your client.
And it's also not only that, but it's also how the person says something. It's like,
exactly.
If you go, okay, are you ready to, you think you're going to get this plan going? You go, yeah, I think so.
Right.
You hear hesitation. You hear sighs. You
exactly.
hear, and it's so funny because one of my clients says, I can see you shaking your head, and I go, oh, did I hit Zoom instead of, am I on video? And it's like, no, I hear what you're saying. You're hearing me nod in agreement. Okay, yes. So it's how you say it, it's what you say, and as Terry said, probably even more important, it's what you don't say.
And what's the energy around the conversation? Is there dissonance? Is there resonance?
Yeah.
And it's only when you really are quiet and with the client, literally, that you can feel that spectrum going on.
Yeah.
And, that surprises the client when you challenge them, which I did this morning, as I couldn't understand what he was saying. I understood what he was saying, but it didn't go together. He had something that I like to call collapsed distinctions, which is where things get mushed together, and they feel like they're one thing, and they're based on one thing.
You have to untangle it.
Take it apart. Well, what does that have to do with this? Huh? Oh, nothing.
Exactly.
So that's
clean your basket out every now and then.
Exactly.
Dump it all in there. Yeah.
Right.
And the next one is powerful questioning, which is, I think anyone who's probably watching the show knows that you get a far better response if you have an open-ended question as opposed to a yes or no, or an either or that limits to two choices, or even multiple choice. Let the person decide what their answer is by asking, who, what, when, how, as opposed to can, should, do, where the answer is yes or no. So those, it's up to you to formulate, you as a coach, to formulate the questions so that you can get the most information out of them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we come to the last core competency in that block, which is direct communication, which I think we've talked about in several occasions. How can you be direct with the client? Because in life, it's very difficult to really have direct communication where you're letting somebody know where he, she stands. And, what I'll say sometimes is, so I'm going to challenge you here.
Okay. Challenge.
And just so they know, because then I'm going to have a direct communication. And I'm going to say, so I hear you saying this, and yet I'm feeling something else. Or, so, Joe, I'm not buying what you're saying.
Or there might be something. Is there more? How much more? And this is the great time when if you do want to ask permission to make an observation. Well, you know what I've noticed? There's an ongoing thread of self-confidence and you challenging or self-deprecation or whatever you see. This is the time to do it, to just say, and then again, don't be attached to the answer, but just say, okay, how do you feel about what I just said? And that way you can get information even if even if Joe totally disagrees, you can still get an information about, okay, what's going on. I can still sort of find out what's going on. So so those are all the communicating effectively goals.
Right. Now it's coming to the last block, which is facilitating learning and results. And that is creating awareness, which we've talked about, and being aware and having the client be aware.
Right. Reinforcing it. I mean, it could be a simple question like, okay, what are you taking away from today's session? Or what did you learn about yourself today, or the situation? And if your client doesn't have any idea, I don't know. Well, then say, okay, may I tell you what I noticed, and then how do you feel about that? But it's doing something that will, because a lot of times, as you know, when you're talking, you don't necessarily remember what you said. You're responding and you're thinking of the next answer, and sometimes the clients just don't remember, and it's like, well, a really key moment was. But it's even more impressive if they can say, well, you know what I learned? I learned that I really shouldn't put everything in one basket. I need to separate it out so I can tackle it. Whatever they learn, and then that's kind of the whole point of the session is to create some awareness.
The next two, well, then we'll come to the one that we're going to talk about and hopefully have enough time.
I know.
Designing actions and planning and goal setting.
Yeah.
So those are the next two core competencies. You want to quickly...
for designing actions, goal setting and planning, we'll talk about that in a minute, but as the whole session is designing actions.
Right.
So take good notes, or if you have one of those memories, I don't.
Right.
Take good notes, because as you progress, the actions are being designed.
Right.
And you're eliminating things that the client's not going to go for, and you're adding things that they've sort of found out about. So designing actions, I think, starts at the very beginning, from setting up the coaching agreement right on down to the bitter end.
I agree.
And you want to do planning
and goal setting is developing and maintaining an effective coaching plan with the client, and goal setting is, setting markers along the way, and planning and then setting.
And be as specific as you can, because the more details, the more cemented in the client's awareness it becomes. It's like, oh, okay, so you're going to send your boss a letter that requesting a meeting. When you're going to do that? What are you going to say? Just get all the details down, so so they don't have to. They get off the phone and they go, I don't know. What am I going to do? So be very specific.
Exactly.
And timely. Don't, it's like, I'm going to do that someday. Because I do that all the time. Give them a time.
Making sure.
Yeah.
So we come to the 11th and last core competency, which is managing progress and accountability.
And let me just say last for now, because Magda told us that, they're in the process of reviewing, so we could have more, we could have less.
Right,
I don't
exactly,
know.
exactly.
But for now, this is the last one.
Exactly. And that is holding attention on what is important for the client and leaving responsibility with the client to take action. And responsibility, accountability, that's what this is all about. And I think it's the whole coaching. Accountability, always holding the client accountable for what they say they're going to do, and having them follow through.
I think that's the reason why some people do the coaching, because it's like, if I have to report to someone, then I'm probably going to get stuff done. But if not, if I'm doing it on my own, so I think the accountability is key. And I think managing the progress, it's kind of like when you set up the coaching agreement. It's like, well, how are you going to know when you've completed your goal?
Right.
How are you going to know what's successful?
Exactly.
Is it going to be you save $20 a week, or you save $200 a week? What's the progress, and how are you going to hold yourself accountable?
Right. Absolutely. I have two quotes. One is, at the end of the day, we are accountable to ourselves. Our success is a result of what we do. And that was Catherine Pulsifer, who is an author, which I love. And the other one,
I think it's time to pull out a points of view card, the success card, which is, he's almost got the ball in his mouth, but not totally. And what it's like, success. Everybody gets to define their own success, right?
Yes, and if you don't reach it, it doesn't mean you're a failure.
Yes, we just had that conversation.
Right.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that. And the other one, which I like, is by Yaron Golan,
who developed
he's an Israeli publisher. I didn't know that.
Yes.
Its results allow us to know where we stand in relation to the target we had set. Pause, take a look, make amends if need be, and then move forward.
I am so glad that you brought Yaron in, because
I didn't know.
Isn't that funny? I love that. Yeah, they're very wise over there, believe me. But I remember when I was taking their training, he came up with something, and I don't know if it was his original, but I'll give him the credit anyway. And we were talking about goals and dreams and all this stuff, and he goes, every dream needs an Excel plan. And it was like, or a spreadsheet. And it was like, yeah, dreams are good, but what you're getting here is you're taking a dream and making it a possibility. And that's it. And whereas one of the cards is everything is possible.
Right.
So I think that's what Terry was saying in that last quote also. It's like, this is how you make your dreams come true. This is how you modify your dreams so that you can make them come true.
I think what we touched upon last week, or last time, was there are dreams, and then there are that you fantasize about and don't do anything about, and then there are those dreams that you have an Excel sheet or a spreadsheet that you have a plan. Okay, here's overall what I want. Now, how am I going to get there? It's the same thing, step by step by step. And if somewhere you don't see that that's where you're going to get to, it's okay to move in another direction.
Well, you know what? It's like we could think it like a GPS, sort of, like on your phone, and you got the plan, you got it all routed out, and then there's construction or there's a detour, and it's like, okay, well, there are different paths that can get you there. So you might have to take a detour, you might have to take a break. I know you and I both had some health challenges, and you have to take a break, and you have to set your priorities. You know, say, what am I going to take care of now, and what can wait?
Exactly.
So. It's interesting because we were saying, well, success. It's success might just be getting through the year, without doing anything destructive. As opposed to, you might have to put your plan on hold, or you might have to accelerate your plan because you met it in the first 3 months.
Exactly. So everything is. And I was working with a client, and I sent him a article on it's agile planning and development.
Flexibility, I love it. Yeah.
What did that mean to him? It means being nimble, being flexible, not being rigid. And it goes along with the whole acronym of VUCA world today. Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And when you live in that world today of, I think, everything, mostly business, you have to be willing to one of my blogs was dancing on shifting sands.
Oh, okay. I like that too.
That's where we all are.
Yeah.
And, being able to be agile and to move in a flexibility way, even with the core competencies.
Absolutely,
we've outlined what they are, but it's how you work with them, in a way. From each one, maybe it has to shift a little bit. Maybe this has to happen.
Or maybe you have to emphasize one of them and
exactly.
de-emphasize the other. It is a matter of flexibility. It's a matter of coaching presence, being aware of what's needed.
Exactly.
And giving that to whoever you're talking to. And it doesn't just have to be a client. It could just be in regular stuff. Hopefully the coaching session has brought about more awareness, and you're aware of more of your capabilities or different perspectives or whatever you want to get out of that coaching session. But these are great guidelines to get going.
They are, and I really want to say thank you for letting us share.
I know, it's been so fun.
These core competencies over the year, and hopefully we've imparted some wisdom
a little bit
of that. We've always said this isn't only about coaching, it's about life. And on that note, I'm going to say bye.
Have a great new year. We'll be back next year.